Awesome. Lovely. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. It's so great to share space with you and to hear how you're all feeling colorfully. For tonight, I don't want to do too much talking. I'm just going to share a bit about what I shared in our previous micro learning session. I will also be sharing artists that inspire me. And then we're going to hopefully create together for the rest of the session. So I'll just jump right into my slides. And I should be able to share. Yeah. Okay. Can everybody see my screen? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so um, in for today, I'm going to be really focusing on these two concepts of realism and symbolism that I use in my work to create a visual language for storytelling. And the way I kind of define these terms are realism being a descriptive way to represent an experience, and symbolism going beyond a literal meaning to describe an emotion, idea, or message. Um, so I'll share that my practice incorporates photography, painting, drawing, and printmaking. But today I'm really going to be focusing on my paintings. And in our last session together, we talked about my approach to art making that involves subtle gestures of touching and noticing the body through painting. I also shared the importance of beauty and listened in what role it plays in your lives. And I pointed out how I use color and body language symbolically to tell stories that evoke emotional tonality in my subject matter. Working in this way, I pull from lived and imagined experiences that reference my spiritual journey and explore intersections of race, gender, religion, and identity. I also introduced two important political frameworks that ground my practice, which are Black liberation theology and womanist theology, as they really center Black and Brown voices through interpreting the Bible. So I'm just going to share some more examples of my work and point out how I'm using realism and symbolism as tools of communication. And then I'll share some work of artists that I really like. My slides are a little out of order. So I'll start with the series called Coming Out, whereby the concept of Black liberation is represented through evocative body language, whereby a gesture of empowerment is conveyed by a strong Black leg stepping through a doorway, accompanied by a generous all-over treatment of color. These codes or symbols work together to communicate ideas pertinent to Black bodies moving freely and unashamedly through space. And so when thinking about color, depending on our cultural frameworks, we are accustomed to carrying memories with certain colors. Within Judeo-Christian tradition, the rainbow is associated with God's protection, as it is described in the book of Genesis, and chapter 9, verse 11 to 17, as a sign of the covenant between God and man. In today's culture, the rainbow carries symbolic meaning such as joy, peace, pride, and hope. Throughout the pandemic and into today, we can continue to see how the use of the rainbow and the flag on doors, in windows, and shops, on stickers signifies social change. Because we have these strong associations with this symbol, the viewer, when looking at the work, can make a connection of uplift when seeing the Black body in this context. And so it's interesting that tonight a lot of folks were feeling like lilac or a light purple or or a lavender, because that's an important color in this piece that I'm going to talk about, where I've chosen to paint the door a light purple or lavender that is associated with womanism. And the piece personalizes a biblical story known as the woman with the issue of blood, which is basically about an unnamed woman in the Bible who was deemed unclean and ostracized from her community because of a medical issue that caused her to bleed profusely for 12 years. She spent all that she had on doctors, only to receive her healing by having enough faith to believe that by simply touching the hem of Jesus's garment, she would be made whole. In this painting, I've positioned the woman closely cropped in front of a purple doorway, not only as a way to signify the womanist tradition of inserting Black voices in biblical narratives, but also to empathize with the idea of a person confronting a barrier. These visual elements, in addition to the title of the painting, which is The Woman with the Issue of Blood, work together to tell a story using lived and imagined experience, as well as imagination. And so for time's sake, I'm just gonna jump a little bit ahead. And talk about these works. In these two paintings, I'm opening up an alternative way of representing the body without including its entirety. The piece on the left, the staggered ears positioned on a ladder in the painting communicate a sense of movement and elevation by using the visual elements of gradation and repetition. For me, representing the body this way speaks to a perceived way of knowing through hearing. In the painting on the right, entitled Emptied Out, the idea of a body is implied with the empty shelves as a vessel to be cleared out, leading to unknown territory. And so for the artists that I'm going to be showing on, they are all American, but I'll say that's been my dominant influence in education so far. And I want to point out that while looking at the work, keep in mind how the body is being portrayed and what ideas and messages could be explored or communicated. So this first artist, Kara Walker, in her work, her highly graphic, large-scale installations use formal strategies pulled from narrative painting to create counter-narratives that explore the undeniable tensions between the characters, events, and time periods that are reminiscent of antebellum South. Her cut and pasted silhouettes lean into the theatrical nature of narrative painting and forefronts the sinister violence loaded with intersections of race, gender, sexuality, labor, and slavery. And so a question that I will pose for now is, how does the way in which this artist work with materials confront problematic ways that the Black body has been depicted in history and visual culture? And anybody is welcome to unmute and respond. I will point out that these are pieces of paper that she cuts and creates silhouettes and just pastes on the wall.
Sorry, Shantel, could you repeat the question once more?
Yeah, sure. The question is, how does the way in which this artist work with materials confront problematic ways in which the Black body has been represented in history and visual culture?
I think one way that comes up for me, at least, in Walker's work, thinking about like 19th century, like eugenics and science, like science that had the sort of endpoint of depicting Blackness as subhuman, and specifically like rendering legible this sort of fact of Blackness in a very particular way that I find like Walker counteractively works against in these spaces where there's only so much that is visible to us through sort of silhouettes and profiles, and typically things that maybe would occupy like a frame actually take on like life-size proportions and that directly are adhered to surfaces in ways that sort of reconfigure how we should even navigate a particular sort of like art space. So like, how should we look at the Black body, but also should we even see, should all of the Black body be legible to us at all times? I think comes through when I look at her, like her silhouettes.
Well, I didn't even consider it from that aspect of like a scientific lens. Thank you for sharing. Does anybody else have a response?
Maybe I'll share. So I was thinking that it's very, it invokes a remembrance. I remember like a caricature, you know, type of medium. So it's black and white, it's flat, it's a moment in time, it's one action. But there's like a romantic, you know, it's very romantic, it's kind of whimsical, it feels like with the bell-shaped dresses. But anytime I see some form of a caricature where it's just a flat depiction of a person, a situation, or you know, the statement is just literally black or white, I question that. I question what is the message. So I think maybe in that way it's invoking that, you know, conjuring up the kind of point that she's trying to help us explore.
That's a great point. Thank you, Siona. The next artist I'm gonna share is David Hammonds. And I'm going to be focusing on his body prints, which engage in a printmaking process whereby the artist uses his body as a matrix for creating prints on paper. So you can see David Hammonds in his studio there making a print. So in his studio, he would rub margarine on himself, so butter, on his skin and clothing, press them against paper, then lightly coat the surface with varied pigments, creating precise impressions of his likeness and his identity. He would also make prints of everyday objects in his surroundings, as he couldn't afford expensive materials at the art store. In this series, you will find still images of the artist's body marked and placed in provocative poses of clasped hands, praying, unzipped pants, with this in visceral detail signaling an awkward closeness to the viewer. When reflecting on the work, the artist shared having a, quote, moral obligation as a Black artist to try to graphically document what I feel socially, and that, quote, by using the body, I'm going to have the truth whether I want it or not. The next artist I'm going to share is Romare Bearden, who is best known for his colorful collages that combine abstract geometric patterns, bright fields of color, and cutout clippings of Black heads, faces, and hands in varying proportions. He places them rhythmically throughout his compositions. And this artist is rooted in the African-American experience. His work reflects the influences of his youth, urban and rural life, jazz, storytelling, as well as his later art education. And he incorporates Renaissance painting, modern art, African tribal sculpture, and Christian iconography in his work. And for this one in particular, I want to point out how the artist is using color to evoke a sense of space within the composition, something that I'd love for us to be mindful of when we're making our own work later on. The next artist I'm pointing out is Nathaniel Mary Quinn, who is a multimedia artist who makes paintings and drawings that incorporate oil paint, oil sticks, pastel, and charcoal to represent the dense, nonsensical, and fragmented nature of the human condition. His realistic depictions of people reference imagery from movies and characters in pop culture, as well as his personal archive. He sometimes cuts and layers isolated parts of the human body, rearranging them to tell stories that speak to memory, trauma, and identity. His works also take on a comedic cartoon persona as he plays with the human figure by distorting scale and proportion. His approach to working with materials creates a tactile, visceral reality that both invites and challenges viewers' perceptions of people, culture, and history. The next artist I'll be sharing is a realist painter, Kerry James Marshall, who has dedicated his career to using old master painting techniques to create paintings of dignified African-American figures that reference art historical narratives. He is markedly known for depicting the Black body in a variation of hues that reveal the depth and complexity of Black skin. Working in this way, he intentionally identifies the body by its color as a matter of fact, leaving no room for ambiguous interpretations about who these people are. He depicts his subjects in familiar environments, such as the barbershop, restaurants, the bedroom, often portrayed totally comfortable and aware of themselves, gazing at the viewer. And the next and final artist is Lorna Simpson, whose practice incorporates photography, printmaking, painting, sculpture, and drawing to explore aspects of Black womanhood. In particular, her collages focus on hair as a central subject and combine fluid swirls of watercolors and vibrant hues, found images of galaxies, text pulled from advertising, astrological maps, and precious stones from the earth as symbols for describing Black hair as being out of this world and fortified. Working in this way, Lorna represents the coily, kinky, mysterious, and sculptural nature of Black hair while confronting long-standing negative associations it has been privy to in society. So I don't know if anybody had any comments or feedback on the artists that were shared. I'll just pause for that. And I can go back to slides as well. Okay, well, I'm going to go to the art making component of the evening. I'd like for us to keep in mind how the body is used symbolically in the works of the artists that I've shared. And in creating tonight, consider what gestures will best describe the essence of a memory or narrative that you're interested in exploring. In addition, consider how color can be used symbolically as a tool of communication. So whether you use found imagery in the style of Lorna Simpson, create highly rendered forms, hand-drawn or painted, such as in the work of Kerry James Marshall or Nathaniel Mary Quinn, use reduced forms that are cut and pasted, like into the work of Kara Walker or Ramir Bearden, or if you choose to create prints with your own body using maybe kitchen oil or butter, that's of your choosing. So to get into like what we'll be doing together, so I'd love for us all to, like, if we have the capacity to go and grab any items that are in your immediate surroundings that you'd love to make art with if you haven't already done so. For me, I've kept it low stakes. I just have like some markers, pens. I have some gold colored chocolate. I kind of want to use the golds, the foil, and glue and scissors and tape and paper. And yeah, I'd love for us to create together and think about how we can use symbolism and realism to convey a memory or a narrative. So these are just some tips for if you need some prompts for engaging your imagination. you can read those if you feel inclined. But if anyone needs like a moment to go gather some things, or just get comfortable, feel free. And yeah, let's create together.
Do you think it would be productive if I didn't actually put something in on the paper, just going through the process of imagining? And do you think that would, yeah, be a good worthwhile experience?
Yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with. You know, no pressure. If you want to take the time to reflect and on a memory or how you would imagine putting engaging in an art making process, that's totally cool. I'd love to hear like what you come up with at the end, if you want to share. Yeah, so how's everyone doing? Are we wrapping up our creations? Are you ready to share?
Well, mine is not as multidimensional as Ava's. I didn't use that many materials. I just used a little board that was painted white and some Sharpie and a blue highlighter, and a little bit of brown paint. And the artist, so this is my, it's really hard. You can't really, can you see? So I used repetition and space and color, and I entitled this piece Beloved Community with a question mark. And if you look, I really honed in on the gaze, or like people's like eyes, I guess. So it could be the same person or it could be a bunch of different people, and they're all looking in different directions. And there's all this space in between them. And you can't really see their relationship to being brown or whatever, but it just kind of happened to them. And so what is their relationship to each other? They don't know. And that's my idea.
Yay! That's so cool. I love it. I'm familiar with your iconic characters that you doodle with, and I love how you brought it into this activity. And it's, for me, it reflects like what we're all doing here in a way. I can go next, even though it's, you know, it's what it is. But I don't know if y'all can see. Let me put it on gallery view. Okay. So I just used two tones of construction paper. So this is like a light pink. And this is kind of like an asphalt gray. And I continued with the motif of the legs because it's been on my mind. And I feel like the legs, they have all different kind of character traits, whether it be leisure, whether it be dancing, whether it be engaging together. Yeah, I think that the legs really embody movement and flexibility that I'm lending to myself. So that's what I have. And I think, well, the color choices are like the color paper that I had, but I like that the pink kind of offers like a sense of, it's just like a lighter tone.
Can I go next?
Yes, please.
So, I guess I have to, let me just unblur my background here so that you can see, where am I? Oh dear. Okay, spare with me one sec here. But Okay. Okay, there we go. So this is my piece. I call it My Emotions. And I use magazine, took colors from the magazine. The circular with all the multicolors are just like scraps of wrapping paper that I had. And I used some art marker, paint markers to do the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. And it's just as everybody was sharing, you know, how they were feeling and their colors. And as I was doing it, that was what sort of I came back to, that, you know, we on different days we feel different ways, and you know, different emotions, you know, bring out the colors. And so that was sort of what was going through my head, you know, in terms of putting this together. It's a little crooked, but yeah, so I call it My Emotions. So that's my piece.
Aw, yay. That's so awesome, Marcia. I can't believe how quickly you worked with all of those elements. I'm really impressed, and I like the hair in particular.
Thank you. I was actually going for something else. It was supposed to be the ocean, but then I kind of flipped it, and it just, yeah, I did. I flipped it and add all of that there. So anyways,
Good job.
thank you.
Did anybody else want to share? I'm hoping we can wrap up soon.
I can go. Hey y'all. So I kind of just started with this. I'm not sure what to call it yet. I'm thinking something like bodies. I specifically wanted to think about like non-binary bodies, and I'm using like those newspapers that come in the mail that kind of get wasted to like incorporate in there. So like, I don't know if it's necessarily the body or the clothes. Well, I'm still working on how I'm going to represent it, but I think I'm going to be adding different elements and type of textures to the rest of the bodies. But I did want them to kind of be non-conforming, non-binary, kind of hard to place a gender on, but very unapologetically Black with the faces. I went for like asymmetry and all of that. So yeah.
This is so dope. I'll say I love it so much, especially the connection you made with the materials that you used and the ideas you're exploring. Thanks so much for sharing. I saw in the chat that Stella wants to share.
Yeah, okay, 1 sec, so sorry. How do you flip the camera? Okay, so this was a self-portrait I made, and it was inspired kind of by the scream and a time when I felt like kind of validation, and it made me like terrified, but like in a different way. And then I think I tried to utilize repetition, and I just like picked out a leaf from outside my house to kind of make a heart, but I'm not sure if it shows up. But yeah.
Oh, this is so cool, Stella. Oh, thank you so much. I like the multiple eyes going on, and the exclamation from the, I guess they kind of look like exclamation marks actually to me by the ears. I really like the colors you chose too. They're unusual.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm just glad, I'm happy y'all made stuff and we're here together and we we listened to music and we vibed out. So I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who participated. This has been a lot of fun for me too, like to get outside of the way that I typically make and just to like have a good time with you all. So thank you for sharing space. Thank you to the Ujima staff. And I don't know if anyone else has anything else to say, but I'm wishing you all a blessed night and that you sleep well.